We head over to our Kraken, who played 2 games over the past week. One pretty good, one I'd use better
Could
words.
have been better. Yeah. On December 20th, our Kraken faced the St. Louis Blues. They won 5-2. Our player of the game is forward Brandon Tanev with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, a 2 plus minus, 2 shots, 2 hits, 3 blocks, and 1 takeaway. He really stuffed the stat sheet there. On the 22nd at the Vancouver Canucks, that was a brutal loss and a heartbreaker, 5-6 in a shootout. Our player of the game there was Daniel Sprong with 2 goals, 2 points, a 2 plus minus, and 4 shots. So I know you've continued to talk about just like the defense needing to step up. Is that what happened here with our loss?
Oh boy, Bel, I talk about it about how if we had the technology, right, I'd sit here and we'd circle them. Our buddies over at Emerald City Hockey have done just that. We don't have a board for it, but they have photos with big red circles to highlight where the issues were. So, just to look really quickly at that Blues game, that was really solid. The Blues, they're kind of underwhelming this year. I mean, they've got a lot of talent in that roster, and they came into that game on the second day of a back-to-back and without Jordan Kyrou, one of their better players. So you kind of jumped on them at an opportune time, right? But it was a good game to sort of get that offensive sort of flow there. Defense played well for the most part. It was pretty solid. I'm happy with that. And they sent the fans home happy before the Christmas break with only 1 game to go, and that one being this Vancouver game. This Vancouver game, in case you're not aware, maybe you saw it in our tweets, Seattle has not beat the Canucks ever. Despite the fact that, Vancouver had a solid end of the year last year with Bruce Boudreau as their head coach. This year, they suck. They started the year with, they lost their first 7 games. We were their first win, which is bad. And we could look at they're bad. They're just generally bad. They're going to trade a bunch of players at the deadline, I imagine. There's a lot of them in talks, so I imagine they get traded, but some deadlines are quieter than others, right? People, it's horrible to look at social media because everybody points to the goaltending, and in soccer too. If it's like in both of those sports, if you hear a lot about the goaltender or the goalkeeper, it's usually a bad thing. If you don't, it's like, oh, they're doing their job. There's been a lot of criticism. We talked about this week by week. It feels like there's been a lot of criticism of Philipp Grubauer. Martin Jones was the one who started this game in net. He's actually a Vancouver native, so I understand. I'm sure that's why he did. But there were some goals where I wanted Martin to be better in this game. But if there's 4 that Emerald City Hockey took and they circled, how the Vancouver player is left wide open, just unmarked, like, oh, how did he get there? It's just like some of those games. I think it even happened in the Seahawks game where Travis Kelce was running booty naked down the field, and it's like, did somebody forget about him? Let's look at this first one. You see what the issue is here? You see how there's 3 Kraken defensemen all lined up, and see how difficult as a goalie that is for you right now. You're left out to dry. That's number 1. Okay. This isn't goal by order, but there's 4 examples here. So just take a look at that and tell me if you'd blame the goalie there.
No.
Number 2. This is a tip-in goal here. Elias Pettersson had a great game. He had 5 points in this game. But considering the fact that you're not supposed to allow, as a defenseman, you see the defenseman right there to Jones's right. You're not supposed to allow him to be screened by other players. What's going? He's you can see further down, more towards the top middle of the image there. There's a Vancouver player who would get that shot up, so Pettersson could tip it in, and there's a goal there. He's just completely left alone. He should be, that defenseman there should be bullying him, should be trying to keep him away from screening Jones. There's an issue number 2. Number 3, what are we doing?
Oh God,
what are we doing? There's 3 Kraken defenders, we're just skaters right there. And then right there, he's like, paint me like one of your French girls in Titanic, laying out there all sprawled out. He's having a beach day, and all he
No.
has to do is just chip that puck in, right? I don't even need to
Oh,
talk about that one that
too
much.
easy.
And then we look at 4. Same sort of situation. Jones is sprawled out right here. There's 2 Kraken skaters up above him. He's just gotten in. He's leaked through. He snuck past to get into the pantry to get to the Chiefs puffs. It's okay. Do we need to go through it again? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Seattle
I
Blue
hate 3.
2.
I really hate number 3.
Yeah. Well, you don't like him? He's on his beach day. Martin Jones is tanning the cheeks out there. So
No.
Seattle Blue a 2-goal lead twice to go into overtime. In overtime, they were able to. It looked like they got dominated in that overtime. I'll be honest with you. And then shootouts are always tough, but they shouldn't have had to go to a shootout. So it's frustrating. At the end of the day, I like to try to be the optimist, right? Little Omari Salisbury, O's son that I started the podcast with, said that I need to bring back the fire that I would get really fired up before the podcast episodes and be all pissed off, and then I'd be really calm. We'd sit here and hello. We don't need to go through the photos again because I did that, and you can pause if you need to. But that's the issues that this team is dealing with. I see in the comments, the goalies suck. I wish they need better goaltenders. Trade Grubauer. It's just like, that's just stupid. And I know there are some Seattle sports things out here. We're going to go over time. I don't care. They're like, we got to be positive and all that. I get that. But at the end of the day, you're not here just to hear the stats, are you? You're here to hear about what's wrong with these teams. Why did the Seahawks lose by 14? Why are the Kraken why haven't they beat Vancouver in the entirety of their existence? It's only 2 years. I understand that. But this game, that's just a wash. And that should send you into the Christmas break frustrated because, if they had completed that win, that would be a 3-game win streak going into the break against all teams you haven't beaten before. You hadn't beaten the Jets before. They beat the Jets. I forgot the score. That doesn't matter. Beat the Jets for the first time ever. Beat the Blues for the first time ever. And then it would have been Vancouver. It would have been great, right? Again, you put up 5 goals in this game. That's pretty damn solid. You didn't score in the shootout either, which isn't ideal because you've got a lot of guys who are pretty good at that as well. It's just too often things like this happen. Things like that happen. Things like this. It's way too often, and I've had this discussion with several members of the Seattle media, with other people who actually know what they're talking about and don't just look at the box score, because anybody can look at the box score, right? I could look at the box score and see the Seahawks lost 10-24, be like, wow, they kind of got smeared, right? They didn't have any fight in this, right? I could look at this 6-5 game and think there was no goaltending in this. That's not how you look at things. We're not box score people. I don't just look at the score at the end of the game. It's our job. It's why we're here, right? I don't send Bel out there to a Mariners game to just go and eat ice cream, which would be great. I'd love to do that, but it's not why we're here, right? So it's just really a week or 2 ago when Jamie Alexiak and Justin Schultz were out, Alexiak suspension, Schultz injured, and you had the deep pair of Cale Fleury and Gustav Olofsson, Fleury's usually a healthy scratch. Olofsson's usually an AHL, which is hockey's version of AAA, right? You've got a line there, a defensive line that's like a defensive line, funny, defensive pairing that's basically like I'm sending a couple amateurs out there in a way. I'm sending a couple guys out there to play really starting minutes. But now you've got every deep pair healthy. So there's no excuse there. And these mistakes continue to happen. This is Vancouver. This is a division game. These division games are important. You're only a few points ahead of other teams like Calgary, like Edmonton, that you'll actually face this week. So got to win those. Point being, this can't continue to happen because your offense is far improved from what it was last year. Your goaltending's been pretty solid. Martin Jones had a streak where he was not doing really well. He made some mistakes in the Vancouver game, but overall, the last few starts have been pretty solid. Philipp Grubauer, since returning from injury that he suffered against Colorado, has been great, like statistically great. I mean, there was the Florida Panthers game, which was an outlier. That was just really weird. There was penalty issues and officiating stuff. Point being, your goaltenders haven't been your issue at all. And I've normally been a Grubauer advocate, but even Jones, I wouldn't throw Jones under the bus here entirely. So it's just the fact that the issues,
Entirely.
I have my issues with him. But just, I mean, look at the 4 photos again. I can't blame him for any of this. So it's the fact that this is like stuff that continues to happen. It's like, they had issues in overtime earlier in the season, and they fixed that. And I mean, I don't think they've lost in overtime since then. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's just same with the C. This goes exactly to what I talk about with seeing adjustments that need to be made and they're not being made. It's like, if you keep trying to come in the door that says pull and you're pushing, you're going to stop, right? And you're going to do the other thing. It's like if you just kept pulling, you're like, this isn't working. Why isn't it working? We know why it's not working. We know what the issue is. It needs to be fixed. And it's just not. And I don't know where that comes down to coaching, if it's a personnel issue. We've still got a good amount of season to play. We play until about April or so, right? Maybe later, granted playoffs, right? So there's time for this to be fixed. But the fact that this has been an issue since day one for Seattle, like their defense, if we look at year to year with the Kraken, it's only 2 years. I get that. Year 1, defense, horrible. Year 2, year 1, offense, also horrible. Year 2, defense, still bad. Offense, good. It's like something improved. And yes, you added Andre Burakovsky. Yes, you added, Oliver Bjorkstrand. Matty Beniers is Matty Beniers and won the Calder. Your fourth line of Daniel Sprong, Morgan Geeky, and Ryan Donato. I mean, they're generally fourth line. I think Donato's actually been bumped up to the third line. They've all been playing like madmen, considering they're all on 1-year deals. It's all like prove it, right? And they're proving it. That's not the issue. The issue is, Adam Larson and the top pairing of Larson and Dunn has been pretty solid. But too often do I see, and none of them, I say that they're solid, none of them are innocent of this. Like, I think in some of these, it's Larson who's the last guy. I can't see it on my thing too. I think that's Carson Soucy right there.
Yeah.
I can't see it too well. The Alexiak Schultz pairing right there. So I think Larson's in here. So I'm sorry, I can't see it blown up on my screen. But point being is this happens too often, right? And it just goes, like I was just saying, goes back to the Seahawks issues where we know the issues that are taking place. We know their run defense is bad. It just hasn't been fixed. It's the same issue here. So that's where my frustration lies. I'm glad. Thank you to Emerald City Hockey for pointing those out and posting those, because now I have proof. Like, I'm not just spitballing and saying, just like blindly defending certain people.
Right.
So I apologize if I got winded there, but it's just the fact that it continues to happen again and again and again and again. It's like if I'm gonna get better, I have to adapt to things. We have gotten better. I used to record the podcast in here on my own. Since then, normally, not today, we've got a studio we record in, and we've got high quality mics, and we've got more segments to the show, and we, this, and this. Bel is here. Bel hasn't always been here, right? You improve, and you adjust. Not happening here with this Seattle defense. So, I mean, we could talk about the penalty kill struggle. The penalty kill's been all right as of the last month. Power play's been struggling. I'm not as concerned about that as I am the defensive play. That is my thing. I don't know if you want to add on to my angry mountain. Yeah.
Anyway. It's just nice for me to hear from your perspective what happened and what went wrong, because I was actually on a flight out that day. And so I was tuning into your Twitter updates, and I thought at the beginning of the game that the Kraken had it in the bag with the lead that they created for themselves. And once again, another lead that they created for themselves. So as soon as my flight lands and I see the score and I see that we lost, it was like, what the hell happened? So yeah, it's just nice to hear you tie it up in a bow and what was wrong.
Yeah. And it's just annoying that I have to continue to have this same conversation again and again, because it's like, I'll get that question, whether it's from family or, or I'll see the comments.
What's going on with the Kraken?
Pretty much. And it's like, One, you could turn into Circling Sales Sports on Converge Media every Monday at 4 o'clock, or it's like, yeah. So anyway, let's look at Player of the Week.
I piggybacked off of your pick here for Player of the Week because, just like you mentioned earlier, someone that fills the stat sheet, it's kind of hard to ignore that. So from our win and from his performance from that win, Brandon Tanev was our agreed player here, who had the 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, a 4 plus minus, 4 shots, 3 hits, and 3 blocks. So again, that was my logic, just like you specified earlier. Stuff the stat sheet.
Yeah, and then
You're
with
pretty much everywhere.
with 2 games too, it's kind of tough because it's like, I mean, Tanev over the 2 games had the most like sort of accrued points in best plus minus, and that's why I went with him there. It's like, yeah, 2 games is kind of hard. With 3, sometimes you can, if there's like a guy on a goal streak, like last week with Ryan Donato, stuff like that. 2 games is tough, so I can understand that. But anyway, we'll throw it to league news and 2 games against divisional opponents, as I mentioned, which, ooh.
League news here on the 23rd. Alex Ovechkin is NHL's second all-time scorer. The great 8 scores his 802nd to pass Gordie Howe, and now he sits only behind Wayne Gretzky's 894 goal record. Pretty big deal there. We come back to our Kraken here. They now sit at an 18-10-4 record. They are third in the Pacific with 40 points. And looking ahead, they will face on December 28th, they will face the Calgary Flames at 7 p.m. And on the 30th versus the Edmonton Oilers, another 7 p.m. puck drop. And it looks like both of those are here at Climate Pledge.
Yes. So good to get back home. Both of those. So the next 3 games are all nationally televised. So it won't be on Root Sports. So plan accordingly.